That's right, we are coming to you live directly from the Sydney Overseas Passenger Terminal where we have the food truck, and we're bringing you here today the results from the latest 2019 food waste report. Sorry about the slight late running of the live stream today. A few technical difficulties, but we're at you today. We're coming at you now live. And my name is Charlie Clack, commodity analyst with Rabo Research here in Sydney. Of course, this is open to the public here today, and so if you are in Sydney, please pop on down. We've got the truck here. We've got a few different activities going on. We've got coffee happening in the background, so please pop on down. If you're unfortunately not in Sydney today, that doesn't matter. You've got this today live, but also you can get involved on Yammer. Make sure you hashtag Don't Be a Waster, and get involved also with the leftover lunch coming next Wednesday, 4th of December. Bring in your leftovers from the night before, make something up from leftovers, take a picture, put it on Yammer, and you can get involved that way as well. So why are we here today? What are we talking about? Well, today we are bringing the food waste report for 2019, which makes up part of the Financial Health Barometer. So Rabobank Online Savings do a survey each year, done it for the past 9 or so years, where they interview or survey 2,400 Aussies, just like you and me, and they get their sort of views, their attitudes, their behaviours on things like debt, savings, superannuation, even happiness sometimes. All makes for very interesting reading, and for an analyst like me, very, very interesting data. But more recently, the last 4 or so years, the survey has been asking consumers about things like food production, the farm to fork journey, and of course, food waste. And so today we are bringing all that data and those results to you live. We have the truck here, and we have the presentation being carried out on the truck just a little bit later. You'll see that as it happens, and we'll get the best, we'll just get the latest results from that report. Of course, we all know that household waste is the largest contributor to food waste globally, and so it'll be interesting to see how those trends have changed over the course of the year. Now, when we move up onto the presentation deck there, it won't be me speaking, fortunately for you, but we've got some great speakers today. We'll start with Bede Cronin, head of Rabobank's online savings in both Australia and New Zealand. And Bede will be introducing and also running the Q&A panel session with some fantastic guests we have up there later. We'll then move on to Glenn Whelans. He's head of client experience in Australia and New Zealand, and he'll bring those survey findings, the latest of what's going on in that food waste spectrum. On to our guests. We've got some fantastic guests for our Q&A panel. We've got Katie Barfield. She is a self-proclaimed food waste warrior, and also co-founder and CEO and founder, of Yume Food Australia. Now, Yume is Australia's first online marketplace for surplus food, matching up those that have surplus food with those who perhaps want it at that discount price. Also, we have Edwina Beveridge. She is a New South Wales pig producer and has some really innovative ways on farm of utilising food waste. Firstly, she uses food waste, processes it and provides it to her pigs as feed, and also is able to capture the methane from her piggery to utilise that in powering the farm. So really excellent examples of both using food waste and making sure that running a sustainable business. Lastly, then we have Alex Elliott Howry, who is co-founder and a chef, but co-founder of Cornersmith. They are a cafe in Sydney's inner west, and also has a number of other enterprises, cookbooks, cooking classes, online courses for pickling. So very passionate about food waste, and we'll be hearing about all of them and the results today. So enough really from me. In a moment, we'll be getting up onto the presentation deck and be hearing from Glenn and Bede initially, and then around about 10 o'clock, we'll be getting into the Q&A session. After that, it'll be back to me, and I can show you around the site here. We can show you a few different things we've got going on. We've got the coffee, we've got the augmented selfie station, some VR headsets up the top there, and some voting station there, but I'll show you all that in good time. Really, that's sort of what we'll be looking at today. Really, I think we'll head up onto the presentation deck, and you'll get the best view in the house. We'll speak to you later.
Well, thanks very much, Bede. I'd just like to extend my welcome to you this morning as well, and especially after last night. I'll move my technology. Especially after last night, what a morning we've got. And I think for me it's also kind of special that the rubber food trucks here located at Circular Quay, really underneath the shadow of the Harbour Bridge, because in many ways I think the Harbour Bridge is a really nice symbolic link to what we're going to talk about today. So the Harbour Bridge to me as a Sydney-sider growing up was one which was really a sense of inspiration for me as a small kid taking that journey across the city in a red rattler was quite inspirational. And over the years I think I've always reflected in very much the same way about what the Harbour Bridge means to me, and if I can call out three things that ring true to this day around the Harbour Bridge. Firstly, it's a sense of foresight. It's also a really important symbol of innovation. And finally, it brings together a shared purpose. And those three words around foresight, innovation and shared purpose are really what's important today when we launch the food waste report. So just as the Harbour Bridge in the 1920s with its forefathers thought about building a bridge at a time when there was a population of less than 1 million people, how can we build something that's big enough to be able to sustain the future population towards the 5 million that we see today? Innovation, the idea of being able to construct something that is 500 metres long, 134 metres tall, building simultaneously north to south, south to north, and aligning perfectly with those rivets at the top of the bridge. And finally, a shared sense of purpose. At that time, it was a challenging time in Sydney, and yet the construction of that bridge galvanised the local populations as a source of inspiration. And it's really what we're here to talk about today. It's that combination of foresight, innovation, and a common sense of purpose, which is going to make all the difference as we battle food waste. So that's my introduction. What I'm going to do this morning is to start to give you some building blocks. So I think it's really important that we share not only what's contained within our latest release of our report, but also some of the global big picture stuff, because to put it in context, we're a relatively small nation. I think we're the 55th largest country in the world in terms of population, so relatively small, but we bat above our weight. And it's really important that we all make a contribution. So let's start with the big picture for Rabobank globally. Some big numbers and I guess some scary numbers. And through some of the signage that you can see around the place, it's projected that the global population is going to be in excess of 5 billion people, as 9 billion people by the year 2050. 2.5 billion more than we've got today. That rate of growth is somewhere at about 5 million more mouths to feed every month. And what that translates to is, if we keep wasting at the same level, we're going to need multiple planets to sustain us. And as you can see from the visual behind me, currently, globally, it's estimated that a third of all food production is wasted and never is consumed by the end consumer. So the question obviously is, how's Australia doing on that world stage? And I've got to say, if Australia was, if food waste was an Olympic sport, well, we'd have one foot on the podium, which is not a podium that I think we want to be on. So according to both the work that's done globally through organisations and magazines like The Economist, plus also the work that's being done by government, these two stats come together. So firstly, it's estimated that we rank somewhere in about 4th in terms of per capita food waste on the planet. And secondly, that translates to almost 300 kilograms of waste per year per individual. So they're big numbers within the context. And if we drill a little bit deeper, what we can see is that food waste occurs right across the supply chain. Now, a lot happens in terms of being able to get the quality food we all demand from the farm, through the processors, through distribution, to the retailers, the supermarkets, and ultimately for consumption. And broadly, waste occurs, as you can imagine, across each and every step of the supply chain. 31% is wasted on farm, if you like. 25% within the manufacturing process. But the most important player in this game and the battle against food waste is us as consumers. In Australia, there's 25 million of us, and we're growing. The latest stats from the Bureau of Statistics says that we're growing at around about 388,000 more people per year. So we've got a big challenge to be able to grow and support what we do. And it's us as consumers who play that pivotal role in making a difference. And for me, it's been very interesting, even having the conversations this morning that with the team that's before us, is that each and every one of us has stories, is aware of food waste, is doing something about it. But the sense of how do we get a common purpose, how do we align, how do we make a difference is absolutely critical. Possibly the most alarming stats out of our food waste report this year is that we're actually going backwards. So as Bede said in the introduction, we've been really tracking the hearts and souls, the minds, the aspirations of Australian consumers now for the best part of 7 or 8 years. And for the best part of that decade, we've been able to identify some really key trends about what's happening in the psyche of our people. That includes understanding food waste. Now, if we track back to around about the year 2016, food waste was a $10.7 billion issue. And over the previous years, incrementally, we've seen modest improvements in the reduction of food waste. This year is different. We've bounced back. We're wasting more. And the number this year is, again, over that $10 billion mark. And I think what's curious about this year's food waste report is that, as I said before, we look deeply into the hearts and souls and the minds of the Australian population. And what's curious about the numbers this year is this almost perverse sense of depression that exists within the Australian population. You know, we're muddling along, interest rates are low, growth's quite insipid, and we feel quite down. And out of our broader population, we've got somewhere in about 58% feel that for their own purses and wallets, things are quite tough and they need to watch what they're doing. And a further 20% say things are really quite tough for them. You link that together with 75% of Australians care about food waste. And yet for me it's curious that in this environment where we're feeling quite tight about our finances and feeling increasingly aware of the importance of food waste on the economy, that our numbers are going backwards. So if we go to the generational splits, the first question that's important is that we've got this new generation coming through. Our millennials, our Gen Ys, our Gen Xs, more in tune than ever. They've been brought up in the iPhone, iPad generation. They're more socially aware than ever before. It's that generation, right, that will save us? Well, maybe not yet. It's that generation, actually, which is wasting the most. And perhaps, curiously, it's that generation who are most buoyant about the future of the economy. The vast majority of them are feeling that the economy will improve over the next 12 months, their finances will improve over the next 12 months, and they're generally positive about how things are going to turn out. Maybe that's why their focus on actual food waste is something that needs to be more sharply brought into line. And I think the other new news out of our report this year is that not only has that headline number gone to 10.1 billion, but we're now finding new ways to waste food. We have the age-old culprits which still sit front and centre in terms of why we're wasting. And a lot of it, and again that call to arms around the consumer in particular, is absolutely critical. They're still calling out things such as, well, I just bought too much and it went off in the fridge. I don't know how to make the most of my leftovers. Things changed. So therefore, what I thought I was going to prepare didn't occur. Those are still front and centre in the minds of why we waste food. However, there's a new dynamic which is bubbling to the surface in terms of food waste, and that's online delivery. And in online delivery, we've seen a strong movement from last year, 35% of our population saying they're using these services, to 45% within a year, a 10% increase in those using online food delivery services. And it's actually this group that tend to waste the most. The average member of our population or household is typically wasting that 13%. Within this group, it's 16%. So there's work to be done, particularly around this online delivery story. And if I do the breakdown between our states and territories, who's the improvers, who's going backwards, there's a pretty clear message here that there's not one state or territory within Australia over the past 12 months that has actually reduced its food wastage. As you can see from the graphic behind me, it's actually all gone up. And what's also interesting, and again to bring that analogy in between the bridge, food waste tends to be less when people are closer to the source of production. So they understand the energy, the effort, the care, the passion that goes into food production, therefore likely to waste less. So the bridge, symbolic of the urban-rural divide that we have, is something that we still need to work on, and work on hard to close. If we bring out the bigger picture in terms of where we're headed as a nation and where we're headed as a globe, there's a lot of stats, a lot of information, a lot of commentary out there which says that if we're more efficient with our food waste today, and in fact if we aspire towards that zero food waste, we could get to the point of our existing planet would be able to sustain a population in excess of 10 billion. However, those same commentators highlight the fact that if we continue to do what we're doing at the same rate and waste, and recognise that we've got changing populations around the world with increasingly changing taste, then food waste will actually increase. And it may be that we need 3 planets today to be able to sustain what we have. So it's really today, I think for me, is firstly a great pleasure to launch some of the highlights into our food waste report for the year. I think the stats in many ways portray a story which is all not great news. We've gone backwards. All of our states have gone backwards. We've got our up and coming millennials who really represent 25% of the population today, but 100% of the future. They're the ones who are actually wasting the most at this stage. We're also seeing within that mix those good old-fashioned focus of baby boomers continue to lead the way. And if we drill down into the baby boomer segment, their food wastage really hasn't increased much over the cost of living increases. So our baby boomers, reflecting on times of the past, being much more savvy around our processes of what we need to do, the importance of food as a scarce resource, are setting the benchmark for us. So I think learning from our older generations, being able to connect with our younger generations is absolutely critical in this story. And as I said before, it's really around today is another opportunity to bring us all together. And it's another opportunity to talk about what makes our bridge great, what makes us come together, and what's really important in this fight against food waste. It's the ability to be able to have foresight. These statistics certainly bring that to the fore. It's about talking about innovation. And there's been some fantastic examples already shared amongst the group this morning around innovation. And we're going to hear more about the vast amount of innovation that's going on within the industry really shortly. But it's also about anchoring it to the shared purpose. 75% of us care about food waste. We want to do better. We're just not quite getting there yet. We all need to galvanise around a common and shared purpose. Hopefully that's given you some insights into the thematic that's coming through in this year's food waste report. I'd now like to pass back to Beat, who will bring our special guests on board.
Don't go anywhere. Good job, thank you. So, all sounds a little bit doom and gloom, doesn't it? Some pretty serious statistics in there, but also highlighting the importance of actually, and I don't think Ben touched on it, it is a shared responsibility, but we need to start unpicking what is actually driving some of this behaviour. And like every bad habit, quite often you need to actually understand what is the issue, get more inform yourselves around the impacts of that, but also hear some really positive stories about actually what other people are doing to actually make a significant improvement and difference to this in this area. So in that context, I'd like to welcome up Katie to join us, as well as Edwina, if you would mind coming up. And this will form part of an open forum, so we will invite you to ask some questions. But before we get to that, I would like to give both Katie and Edwina the opportunity to share a little bit about their story and their contribution on this topic. So maybe Edwina, would you like to?
Sure. Hi, I'm Edwina. I'm a pig farmer from Young in New South Wales, which is about 4 hours from here. We do things a little bit differently on our farm. We have 22,000 pigs in total, pretty much any day of the week. And we feed them using a high-tech feed system, which is quite different to most pig farmers. So that allows us to use a lot of liquid waste products. So in the last year, I think we used 13,500 tonnes of food waste to feed our pigs, which reduces the amount of grain and other products that we need to feed them. We use some really fabulous products. Most of them come out of the food processing line, so we make contacts in quite big factories where they're processing dairy product or juice or bread, and we take their waste. That makes it a bit easier for us because we have so many pigs. There's not much point us using 1 or 2 tonnes of something. We want things that are quite a lot, quite big quantities, and there is so much food waste, literally truckloads of it, and it's quite appropriate. I won't use the bridge analogy. We're all sitting on a semi-trailer here. We use, on average, a semi-trailer load of waste dairy product every single day of the year. Unfortunately, it doesn't come one truck every day. One day we'll get 10 loads and the next 2 days we'll get none. And we unpack that, so it comes in milk bottles or juice containers or yogurt containers, and we have a machine that helps us unpack that, and then we feed the waste product to our pigs. So I often make a joke that the pigs, like my kids, prefer chocolate ice cream. And another product we use fish fingers, things that have gone past their use-by date, so they're no longer fit for people, but the pigs are very happy eating them. I often say that the pigs are a bit like a grower pig in particular that would be about 10 weeks old, quite similar to a teenage boy, will eat anything. Lots of different things. We do use some one-offs. Last year a couple of years ago, someone rang up and said, I've got 80 tonnes of ganache. I had to go and Google ganache because I didn't know what it was. Icing, I've discovered. So we took 80 tonnes of ganache and I said, oh, that's great, this will be fantastic. It came in great big 20-litre buckets. Took the bucket upside down, set like concrete, didn't come out. Took us about a year to get that unpacked, and I don't think I've been forgiven for taking the ganache. We use, the list of products we use day-old bread, some confectionery products, we use a lot of dairy product, we use fish fingers, we've used different oils in the past, all sorts of things. We've been doing this for some time now, and I feel like our name's getting out there, and a lot of food waste people ring me up saying, I've got this product. Ideally, I like one that's continuing, not one-offs, but we do some one-offs. Another challenging one we did last year was 1,000 tonnes of frozen bread dough, and it had gone past its use-by date in the freezers. It arrived, and actually we took, and it's my husband over there too, my husband and I took home a box of frozen bread dough, and I just sat it in our garage on a bench overnight, came back in the morning, and as it defrosts, it's all expanded, and it's like busted the sticky tape off the boxes and was dripping down the bench. So we thought, righto, I think we can do this. We got a few extra backpackers on to help us unpack it, and we literally hand unpack these boxes. and we were getting 3 loads a week, so we'd get it to arrive at night, so the semi would drop it off on Monday night. Tuesday, we would work all day, unpack a whole semi-trailer load of frozen bread dough into our feed system that would then mix it all up and send it out to the pigs. So we do some different things. It takes a lot of persistence, hard work, it's not easy. And then to add to that, not only do we feed our pigs a lot of food waste, we then, that food waste gets turned into pork. Then the manure that comes from the pigs, we capture the methane from the manure and turn it into electricity. So we also reuse, and that supplies our whole site, plus we sell the excess back to the grid. And then the manure that comes back out of that system, we use as fertiliser on our farm and grow crops and things like that. So we've really got a great system going, really proud of what we do. There's other pig farmers that are doing a little bit of what we're doing, but we do more than pretty much anyone else in Australia. It's fabulous. We just hope for more food waste and to be able to expand our business and take that model further. Thank you.
Okay, that's brilliant, amazing stuff. And Uni is an online marketplace for the sale of surplus food. So basically what we do is we work with a number of suppliers much further up the food chain. So we're at the place where it's being made or grown. Product that can't be sold for a number of reasons, such as it's out of spec or it's getting close to code or there is an error on the packaging. Instead of this being put into deep burial, now they can actually put it onto our marketplace, and then it can be seen by a whole variety of over 2,000 buyers. So our buyers also consist of, if you've been in an airport lounge in the last year and a half, you've eaten food from the Yumi platform that's been sold through the Yumi platform. A lot of our major industrial caterers like Spotless and Sodexo buy product from the platform. I think what we're most proud of is the fact that to date we've been able to return $4.5 million to Australian farmers and Australian manufacturers for product that they might otherwise not have been able to sell. So I think, why does this product actually become waste in the first place? I'll give you some examples of case studies that we've worked with. So Huon, the salmon producers, quality product, real quality product. How could that ever be surplus? Well, there's a number of reasons why it is. Sometimes it'll have a missed delivery window, so you've got to get the salmon from Tasmania and you've got to get it to Queensland. It's fresh and it's en route. And if they miss that half-hour delivery window to deliver it into one of the major retailers, it is returned to a DC. They need 10 days on that. By the time it gets redelivered, it has 9. It's rejected. That is premium quality salmon, A grade. That's one reason. Another reason is it doesn't fit into the packaging. We like our smoked salmon in these certain packaging. Well, salmon just doesn't come like that, yeah? It's bigger and smaller, so they have to get it exactly right so it looks beautiful through that little window. And all those trimmings go on ice by the tens of tons. And they can't always sell that. So that goes onto the Yumi platform and it goes through to manufacturers, dip manufacturers and a variety of other places. And also, apparently we all really like centre cut and we like it to be perfect. But of course, again, there are errors that happen in that production space and it doesn't come out completely perfect or the weight is slightly under. And again, they can't sell that through. So it's a great opportunity for people to be able to see a return on their product. And one thing I wanted to do as well, because we obviously work further up further upstream than the consumer, and I want to talk about the amount of food that goes to waste before it gets to you or I. And it's 4.1 million tonnes in Australia. And that's just in commercial and industrial food waste. So to give you a visual, because that sounds like a really big intangible number, if you imagine a pallet of food, which is 1.5 metres high, and you stacked 4.1 million of those on top of each other, they would reach all the way into the sky, all the way through the Earth's atmosphere, up into space, and that stack would reach all the way to the International Space Station. And it would do it 14 times over. That's just Australia. That's just commercial and industrial food waste. And that's every single year. So it's completely unsustainable. I saw so many heads just going like this then. But it's unbelievable that that is the size of the problem. So we need to do something about it. And now, we have got these bigger multinational manufacturers and the primary producers, and we've got also smaller boutique farmers that struggle to bring product to market, that are placing product onto the Yumi platform and selling it through to market. So we're really hoping that people start talking about this, that we can encourage more manufacturers to get on board, more primary producers to understand that there now is a safe avenue to market where they don't have to disclose their brand. They can put it up white labelled, so their brand is never consumer facing, and we can safely put it into a commercial kitchen where it can be used, and it will never ever, the brand will not be seen. They do not need to put it in deep burial. So that's what Yumi's all about. Let's spread the word and let's solve this problem, because I know we can. Thanks.
Well, thank you both. They're very inspirational and also some pretty startling facts, particularly that one about the space station. But so really, thank you for sharing your stories. Before I open just to some questions on the back of that, and particularly in the context of we really need to start taking some action on this topic. When we look globally, governments in Italy and France have banned supermarket food waste, and they did this in 2016. And legislating that unsold food must be given to banks, food banks or charities. So, should we be legislating against food waste? And do we feel that that's a serious enough issue to be taking that sort of action?
I think that there's a more complex answer to that one. I think I was originally the founding CEO of Second Bite, so I understand food rescue space really, really well. I started that at the same time Ronnie started Oz Harvest, and we've kind of gone through the whole process together. Food rescue is incredibly important, and so is food banking. The service that's provided by them is essential to the well-being of people that are living in disadvantaged circumstances. But the harsh reality is that the four main food rescue organisations, so that's Oz Harvest, Second Bite, Food Bank and Fair Share, move less than 2% of that 4.1 million tonne stack that I just talked about, and it costs $50 million a year to run those organisations. So you have to ask yourself, is that a sustainable and economical way to tackle the food waste issue? And also, is all food that goes to waste suitable for food donation? Well, a lot of that bread dough, I don't know what they're going to do with 1,000 tonnes of unbaked bread dough. Or we've had 100 pallets of ice creams come through the platform. That's not where that sort of charitable fund should go. And I know at Second Bite we ended up throwing away a lot of food. So I think there's a lot more complexity behind it. And I also think that governments need to get involved in being part of the solution. For me, my big call to action is to government, because they are the biggest procurer of food in this country. If you think about defence, you think about justice and healthcare system, aged care. The food that comes onto the Uni platform is super top quality. It has to be, because it passes a whole load of very rigorous tests to make it onto the platform. If they just started buying, they would move the needle on food waste enormously, overnight. So I think they need to come up with a solution, and then I think they can legislate. But I think to legislate without providing industry with solutions, I think that's pushing the food waste onto food charities that may not even be able to use it.
And I think for me, it's definitely around the build, because you're absolutely right that there's a thematic that runs through the report, which is the shared responsibility, and everybody across that supply chain has got a role to play. But I focus on some of the stats within the report, which again talks about our older generations and those which are closer to the source of production. They have that depth of understanding, they're passionate around food and recognise that food is a precious resource. And it's that very group who are really setting the way. If I look at our older generations who are typically putting their hand up and saying, I'm wasting 7 or 8 to 10% of my weekly shop, that's very much in stark contrast to our younger generations who are predominantly residing in the city, and they're predominantly the ones who really don't have that affinity and that connection to the source of production. So the more that we can bridge that urban-rural divide, get people passionate about food waste, and understanding what to do, because again within the report it highlights that we do want to collectively reduce waste. The focus is that often we don't know how and how to do it well.
Okay, my comments in this area, I'd probably support it being legislated, but I do know it's not straightforward. One of the challenges we have with feeding food waste to our pigs is we have to be careful that we're following biosecurity rules. It is illegal to feed meat to pigs, so we get limited by what we can use from a supermarket because it will be commingled with meat products. And I actually get nervous when I hear about a pig farmer taking waste products from a supermarket because I wonder if they're following the biosecurity rules. And if you don't, you might introduce a disease like foot and mouth, or at the moment we're particularly worried about African swine fever, which is sweeping across the globe. So that's one issue. The second issue I have as far as feeding it to animals, it's not straightforward what comes out of the supermarket. So if I take my supermarket in Young, they might have a bin out the back and maybe I could take it, but what's in it's going to change every week. The packaging's not the same, so it's hard to unpack it, and that makes it really hard. So although it might be really geographically close to me, I don't use any food waste that comes out of our local supermarket because it's too challenging. So it's not an easy fix. So maybe until we've got the solutions sorted out. Then again, there's nothing like legislating it to make people work out the solutions.
No, thank you for that. I think there's obviously general consensus that there does need to be a role played by the government in some form, and I think we all know that quite often governments won't take action until we, the public, force the issue. So, touching on Glenn's point, it really needs to be almost a consumer-led drive to force that change, because otherwise getting that catalyst or spur from action from the government may take longer than we actually have available to us to get some action happening. So, I can keep asking questions, but I'd love to hear from any of you that might have a question for the panel.
Hi, my name's Anita, and I love that concept of the consumer-driven kind of change. But what would you say, as a city-sider, what are the top 3 tips that we can do to, firstly, prevent food waste, but also help our farmers as well?
I'll kick it off. I think that amongst the group there's a lot this morning just talking about some of the ones, people from the industry and the team that's here today. We all have ideas and focus, but if we start about what comes out of the research and knowing that the sources often comes down to things such as poor planning, and if we dig a little deeper into what does that mean, is it's often that we'll shop and purchase food on an inspirational basis rather than thinking about it. So good intentions will potentially go to the supermarket. We may not have a list. We may think that we've got our meals planned for the week, but things turn up. So a lot of the waste actually occurs from spontaneity. But within that group, and particularly for the younger generations coming through, the creativity that used to exist in spades with our older generations, be creative with leftovers. Some of the best meals actually happen when they're 2 or 3 days after that original food preparation is really important. We've got a list within the report of some of the things that we can do differently, which are just tips and tricks. We're doing a lot within the office, so we've got a campaign coming up around bring our leftovers to work day coming up in the next little piece. We've distributed things like put a fridge magnet on your fridge so that we can create a shopping list so you think before you actually go to the supermarket. And I think one of my favourite tips is the FIFO tip, which I always thought was a mining fly in, fly out, but it's actually in your refrigerator, first in, first out. And I think simple things like that, strategies like that where you put the best produce at the back of the fridge, naturally encourage a reduction in food waste.
I'm not an expert in the area of household reduction of food waste, but obviously I'm incredibly conscious in my own home, so I can only sort of tell you what happens at home. But I do have 2 growing boys, so food waste isn't such and a dog. So that's a really great composter, because whatever they don't eat, which isn't much, the dog gets. And anything that neither of them can eat, the worm farm gets, and if not, then it goes into, we're lucky enough to have green waste. So, I mean, we're really lucky to have no food waste at all that would go into our landfill bin. But for me, what I do as prep is I know exactly what I'm going to eat for the week. I work out what the meals are going to be, and then I'll cook it all up sort of at the weekend, and I put it in containers, and then I take it to work. And because I work at uni, of course, everybody does the same thing and we collectively eat. But I think it's just the more conscious we are about it, and the more that message is reinforced, the more we will start to change our habits at home.
I love that you're so organised. I wish I was that organised. I don't like cooking, so I go, leftovers, you beauty, I don't have to cook dinner. My answer would be, and I'd love to be able to say, buy more of our pork, because we are helping solve the food waste problem. Unfortunately, we don't have a brand at the moment. We are working towards that. But you know, that's a great solution by making sure you know what your products are coming from and what waste they have in the making of those products.
Thank you very much. And we've got probably someone here that could add some further to this. Alex from Cornersmith. There you go. Sorry.
That's all right.
Have you got any thoughts on the
I've
topic?
got so many thoughts, but it's not my panel. But I'll say it quickly if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. We have a cafe and we run a cooking school, and I've written 2 cookbooks. I actually have a third one on the way, which is all about how to change your food waste at home. So my advice around it is, I know not everyone loves to cook, but I think feeling some kind of joy around being back in the kitchen is the only way that we're actually going to change things as well. And my biggest tip is which is what we teach all our chefs that come through our kitchens, is learn how to use everything. We've been taught over the last 30 years to kind of cook like the French and chop the tops off things and the bottoms off things. But we're kind of like the nose to tail cooking, but with vegetables. So make sure you use your celery leaves to make pesto. Make sure you know what to do, like the pineapple skin soda that we've got today. If you're extracting flavour and you making the most of every single thing that comes into your kitchen, then nothing really ends up in the bin. And also it ends up saving you money. So I think it's a good thing not just for all of us, but for the millennials as well, because they're paying massive Sydney rentals too. So my advice is get into the kitchen, be creative, like what you were saying as well, and learn how to use everything that comes into the kitchen. I'm really big on bringing the traditional cooking skills back, and not in like spend the whole weekend bottling apricots kind of a way, but know what to do with 3 black bananas, know what to do with a quarter of a cauliflower that's going old. And for me that's, we make kitchen scrap sauerkraut, or we pickle cauliflower, or we, put salt on ricotta that's going old and turn it into something else. So just kind of rethinking things and changing your kitchen habits.
I'm going to be eating some of all of that soon. Yes.
Any further questions? We have a couple? Yep.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I was wondering whether you looked at how food, I don't know what the word is, platforms like Marley Spoon, HelloFresh factor into this. Do you find that they're helping the problem or making it worse?
Well, the short answer is yes, we did as part of it. And for me, that was, I think, one of the key insights in that those types of food platforms are increasingly prevalent within particularly the metropolitan areas here. There's certainly a correlation that's happening in between those that are using those sorts of food platforms and more generically online food delivery. It's an increasing source of waste, and it seems to be that the link between those on-delivery services per se, it's not necessarily them, but the knock-on effect that some people may have already purchased stuff outside of that with, or their situations change and that spontaneous dining out occasion happens, and it just means that it's another opportunity in which things can go wrong. I think it's also more broadly in that one of the great opportunities is certainly around, if you talk about the statistics that we shared around how Australians at the moment are feeling just a little bit depressed about the economy and a little bit depressed about society. Food and coming together and sharing it is something that can bring us together. Over the years within this report, we've certainly looked at the magic source, if you like, in terms of what drives happiness. And one of the underpinning factors is this sense of community. And so what better way can we start to bring a sense of community together than start to share our food more and start to think more about using food as a celebration, as a conduit to getting together and rekindling those social connections as well.
So before you mentioned that food waste has increased by $1.2 billion from last year for household, I guess my question is, that statistic shocked me because that's quite a significant jump. And you mentioned that food delivery apps has contributed to that. I guess how much has it? Because I'm just trying to figure out what is that like $1.2 billion like what is it like? I guess that's what I want to know.
You're going to test my statistical brain here, and I don't feel like I've had enough coffee for the morning to give you the full response to that. But there's a couple of things going on, and it's the the 10.1 billion number is in some ways a race against population as well. And so if you imagine that the dollar amount keeps on ticking every year, and the stats that just come from, and it was only released in September, the latest population growth from the ABS, talks about how we've got 388,000 more people than we did 12 months ago. So that's naturally going to continue to increase in terms of growing that dollar number. I think for me it's been the combination of things that even our older generations, as I said in the presentation, still a little bit more wasteful in the year 2019 than they were in 2018, and that particular group is not very reliant on those delivery type services. So it's something that I think is more broad and systemic in that the drivers in terms of food waste seem to be more on those strong, consistent linkages between if I understand where the food's coming from, if I'm passionate about it, if I get the amount of effort, energy that goes into producing it, I'm less likely to waste. And those, as our younger generations come through, and that's the other part of the driver, is that our younger generations, our Gen Ys and Gen Zs are actually a larger part of the population. And they've also got more disposable income than they had 12 months ago as well. And just by the fact that they're out there enjoying life and making most of their social occasions means there's also a greater opportunity for them to waste. So there's those broader population trends that are making a difference. There's the potential lack of connection to the source, which is a contributor. And then ease and convenience, as that becomes easier and convenience for people to access food and not fully appreciate the source and the energy that's gone into it. They all compound together to drive that increase up to 10.1 that we've seen this year. So that includes dining out as well, yeah. Great.
Thank you, Brian. Tricky question, you handled it well. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I'm probably hungry. You talk about changing consumer behaviour, yet we have more options than ever, and we're told when we go to the supermarket that, you know, we can have whichever bread we want, and we know now that it's, well, at least some of it's going to a good home afterwards. So in terms of changing consumer behaviour, how are we going to do that, and should supermarkets be taking more responsibility, or retailers in general, for example, to not offer as much?
I think there are a couple of things that can be done at that level, at that retailer level. First of all, if you go to Europe, they have this whole of crop approach. You know, especially where my mother lives in Spain, and you go into the Spanish supermarkets and there is every shape and size, and we've become so conditioned that your banana needs to be a certain curvature and a certain, amount on a bunch, and that it's heaps of evidence that a single one gets left behind, and we've got this preconceived idea of what things should look like. But of course, Mother Nature doesn't grow, food to order in specifications, and a lot of the product that we get offered at uni, like 100,000 tonnes a year of potatoes just from South Australia go to waste. 100,000 tonnes of potatoes because they don't quite meet the specifications. Now in the UK, one of the things they did was Tesco's reduced the millimeterage of specification by 2 millimetres. So it could be 2 millimetres smaller than they currently had it, and they saved 50,000 tonnes of potatoes in a year by doing that. I mean, that's just staggering. So I think we all need to rethink what real food actually looks like, and that a wonky carrot is exactly the same tasting as a straight carrot, and that farmer had to pay exactly the same amount of water inputs to grow it. So I think it's an education piece around that, because certainly in my career, I've been doing this for sort of 15 years now in this space. I've met farmers that are really struggling to stay on their own farms. Statistically we know that farmers are 2.5 times more likely to take their life than any other profession. That's significant. These are the people growing our food. So we need to radically change the way we look at food. And I think the retailers have a huge part to play in that, because I know that we mop up a lot of the rejected product that is perfectly fresh, absolutely fantastic. It just doesn't look how they think you want it. So, the only thing they're going to listen to is your wallet and your words. Use them both wisely.
I would love to see less offerings, particularly in the meat cabinet. If it was all pork, I'd be very happy.
And that's it. Alex, I have to apologise. We were meant to have served the first course, weren't we? So I've kept you all hungry. It's my fault. I apologise for that. Yes.
Can I say, number one, congratulations and good on you, Rabobank, for what you're doing in this area. We talked about what we can do next. As you know, farmer organisations, there are many, many of them, the sugar growers, the wool growers, the wheat growers and so forth. Why can't we have a food rights association which is funded by some help from Rabo and other people to really do the research and to lobby governments on this such an important question? But good on Rabo.
I'd love to take that one on board, because I'm on some of those agricultural bodies that try and tackle these issues. And I would like to tell you there is a lot being done. There is a Foodways CRC. We got a CRC is a research body that got funding from the government last year that runs for 5 years. I can't remember how many millions of dollars they have. They're doing lots of research projects to try and help tackle this issue, and we're involved in those kind of projects. And so there are different things going on within each industry. So I'm part of Australian Pork Limited, which is the pig industry body, and we do lots of projects in this area, and we're always trying to make sure all of our farmers are doing better and being more efficient.
Well, I think you really do need to be organised and get the message out there. I don't hear anything from the CRC for food waste, and I look at my computer every day for farming news and information, but nothing about food waste.
So I think for me, from my part, it's a fantastic observation, because it's very much around what we see within the broader industry. And if I look at the broader commentary, to your point, I think it's absolutely right that food waste is often seen as a little bit of a cottage industry at the moment. So it's this collective of a lot of individuals coming together, doing their piece. The theme, I guess, from this morning as well is this common shared purpose, which I think absolutely we all need to have that common shared purpose. For me, I'm quite positive that there's waves of change happening. If I look at what's happening more broadly within our food and agricultural industry around the world, it's now around about 2/3 of the top 50 food and agricultural firms around the world now have a food waste strategy. You could say it's 2/3. What about the other third? But that's a step change from what we've seen previously. And for me, it's definitely around how do we move it from what is great innovation amongst a lot of people to a stronger collective. So I really appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And look, I was just going to say, I think that's probably a fair comment, but I think you find, particularly with farmers and other people associated with the industry, it's quite often quite humble. So quite often they're not telling the stories vocally about all the great things that are happening. They just get on and do it. And I think that's one of the purposes of today, is to try to get some of these stories out and build that awareness around some of the great things that are happening, and how can we make that not more known, but also so that others can follow that lead and really get some momentum behind these issues. But you're going to say something?
Yeah, just was quickly going to add, I think that communication is key, and I think that there isn't enough of it. I think there are a lot of great things happening, but people that are involved in it know about it, but we need to tell everybody about it, and there needs to be greater communication. So guys, write about it. Like, put it out there, do huge stories, talk about it. Seriously, it's in the hands of the media, really. We can only do so much. I think academics are really great at research. I think they're terrible about talking about it. They're not good at commercialising and bragging. There's a lot of people that aren't talking enough about it. So please write about it, please talk about it. And I also commend Rabo because they're practical as well as doing this research. They've put UMI in touch with a number of primary producers and manufacturers that now work with us. So I applaud Rabo on this as well. It's good stuff, practical stuff.
Thank you very much. We might wrap up the panel session and we'll move upstairs, but we'll still have plenty of opportunities to ask questions of each of us upstairs. So opportunity is not lost. But so thank you very much for that. Fantastic.
I hope you enjoyed that. We're back here with myself, Charlie Clack, after the live stream of the presentation there. We hope you enjoyed that and obviously receiving those insights from the Food Waste Report 2019 firsthand. So now I want to ask and get a reaction sort of straight after. So we've got Lauren Emmerich here from marketing. Lauren, if you just introduce yourself and your role.
Hi, I'm Lauren from marketing, as Charlie's just said, and I'm here helping today with our food waste launch, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. Great to have you here. And so, Lauren, what really sort of stood out from the session then today? What really sort of resonates in your mind?
I think from this session, I think what I've learned is the volume of food waste in Australia is really surprising, but also that there are things that we can each be doing at home to really make a change ourselves. So things like, planning out your meals, that's something I do. I've got 2 little boys, so, I know like families can actually waste quite a bit of food. So to try and change that at home, I plan all my meals, but before I go shopping, I meal prep. But another cool thing that I've started doing at home is growing some of my own herbs and veggies, and my little boys do really love it. And we've also got a worm farm, which we can put a lot of our scraps, from prepping meals into at the end of each day. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Excellent. No, good to hear. No, great. And we heard a little bit about the demographic differences between sort of baby boomers and Generation Z. Did that surprise you in any sense? Given that I guess Generation Z arguably could be claimed to be more aware environmentally, but actually they from this survey seem to be wasting a bit more food than others.
Yeah, I think it is surprising to see that they are some of our biggest wasters. But I think really it's just an awareness piece. I think if they knew the small things they could be doing at home to make a change, then I think they'd get right on board. So, yeah.
Excellent. No, good stuff. Well, thank you very much, Lauren. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Super. So, yeah, bye-bye. That was Lauren getting that reaction on the Food Waste Report 2019. The figures really speak for themselves. I mean, we waste 10.1 billion Aussie dollars this year, 2019, on food waste. Now that's 13% of annual, weekly food shopping bills. So that seems like quite a lot that's wasted. What really stands out for me, I think, is the fact that actually this food requires land, it requires inputs, it requires effort from farmers, from the supply chain, and really, if it's just being thrown away, it's such a devastating shame, really, to think that really it could be eaten and be nutritious and help feed people. So we'll get stuck in with another interview. We have Jen McCauley. Jen, welcome.
Hi Charlie, it's great to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and Jen, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly to the camera?
Hi, I'm Jen McCauley. I'm part of the country banking marketing team based in Brisbane.
Good stuff. And so, Jen, what have you learnt today through the Food Waste Report?
I was astounded to learn that Australians waste 298 kilos per person. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's absolutely staggering, really, and it's I think that's also sort of reading the report. It's fresh food, it's meat, it's dairy, it's all sorts of things, not just one in particular. Is there anything that you'll sort of take away, you'll do differently now you know that fact?
Well, I already don't waste a lot of food, and I was quite interested to learn that people that are closer to the food, to where it's produced, actually don't waste as much food. I grew up on a farm, so we didn't ever waste any food. So if you have a roast, you have fritters, we grow some of our own veggies. Any leftovers you turn into stir fry. Yep. So we're already trying to do that, but then hearing them speak here today on other things you can be doing, using all your veggies, making pesto out of celery leaves, like they're things that I know now that I should be including in what we do at home. So I think there's a lot we can do, but I don't think everyone knows exactly what they can do. So
yeah, absolutely. Something that really stood out for me was that being creative, making sure that use everything there and use the skins, use the tops, the bottoms, everything. And yeah, really, that's all good food and it can be used. We don't need it all to be pristine or, we can use wonky veg, no problem.
I think it's going back to what our grandparents or our great-grandparents did, really, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. And preserving and, waste not, want not, I guess is the phrase. So, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Jen. No, it's been a real pleasure.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Bye.
No worries. Excellent. Right. Well, I think now, we've heard, the sort of some reactions there from the presentation, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I'd like to show you a little bit more around the site now, actually. So, we've got the truck here and the presentations, but actually we've got a whole site here going on. So I want to show you a few different things. So if you come this way. Firstly, we will start with the augmented selfie station. And many of you at F2F will may have seen this before. So here you go. We've got the station right here, and you can have a you can have a selfie with a background. And there we have Kate there in the hot seat, having a photo. It's got a rainforest in the background there, so I guess highlighting the impacts that potentially food waste has on deforestation. Of course, needing to produce food that's wasted, we're using up more and more land, potentially having that impact on deforestation down the line. So really, really great thing to get involved with. If you want a selfie and you're in Sydney, come on down. We're here till 5 p.m. Next as well, we've got the voting booth. So you can put a stone in any of the boxes. Which impact of food waste do you care about the most? So remember, you can get interactive on this. You can get on Yammer, hashtag don't be a waster, and we'd love to hear which box you would put your stones in. I am, of course, a commodity analyst, so I cover cotton and sugar. So for me, I think one of the big aspects, and something I talk about a lot, is water shortages. The fact that we, at the moment, drought for several years, we have a real lack of water when it comes to irrigation, particularly cotton irrigation. So for me, when I look at landfill, water shortages, animal extinction and climate change, for me it's water shortages. But you can vote for yourself if you come down, or also get stuck in on Yammer as well. A few different tips and tricks. I think we learned a few different things about how we can prevent food waste, and I think everybody received their shopping list yesterday or potentially today. So you can use this, stick it on your fridge. You can plan out your meals. I've got some milk and some bread and some avocados. It makes for a healthy breakfast there. So use yours, stick it on the fridge, and help to save a bit of food waste there. We'll keep going round. We've got a few more things to see here on the site. Up here, it's all cleared now. The presentation is done and dusted a little bit, but now we've got the VR headsets. So nobody using them quite yet. I had to go earlier, you can see there sort of the impacts of deforestation and potentially animal extinction as well as an impact of food waste. Obviously, drilling down in that use of resources for wasted food has an impact on our environment, and that VR really highlights it. It's worth having a look at if you are in Sydney. So pop down. And lastly, we'll take you over, of course, to the famous coffee truck. This one has been all over the country. I think the truck has driven about 13,000 kilometres this year, 17 different events, 5 more in the pipeline, and it's been to New South Wales, Queensland, Vic, also Tasmania, and last one, South Australia. So it's been all over the place, and it's getting a bit of a reputation, this Rabobank coffee truck. So I think it'll get busier later on. I think it was certainly busy this morning when people were first arriving. So that's kind of what we have here today on the site to get involved with. We've got people, members of the public coming in, staff, also journos, media, and all sort of interested parties too. So lastly, I think we'll finish up with a bit of a view over here. If you just follow me, we'll show you exactly where we are. A bit of an iconic site for those of you who perhaps are outside of Sydney at the moment. We've got the Opera House here in the background, of course, the famous Sydney ferries. So it's been so fantastic to have you guys here today on the live stream. Of course, I guess the results today, the big takeaways is that we are wasting more food this year than we have previously. So we had 2 good years of seeing that decline, and this year we're now wasting 10.1 billion Aussie dollars in food waste. So something we really need to be conscious of and make those efforts to reduce it. Household consumption is the one where it is the biggest contributor to that. So we can all play a part in reducing it. Also, don't let that stop you now. With this live stream it's just about coming to an end, but please get involved on Yammer, hashtag don't be a waster, also Twitter as well if you like, and get involved as well with the leftover lunch, which is next Wednesday. That's the 4th of December, and you can bring in your leftovers. There's a competition going on, so you can, within the branches there and everything, you can get involved in that way. So really, I think that's probably everything from me, and it's been great to provide this live stream and great to host you today. So thank you very much, and speak to you soon.